So the first question, are Taijiquan, Qigong and Chinese medicine all Daoist in origin? Okay, well I get asked this one quite a lot actually. I think more importantly, we need to look at how you define Taoism really and what place it has in Chinese culture before we can answer that. Because really you have two types of Taoism to me. You have the Taoism that's permeated all the way through Chinese culture, right the way back into antiquity. And then you have the Taoism that most people would think of as being like an organized religion associated with specific temples and lineages and priests and hierarchies and what have you. If you're talking about the second form of Taoism, sort of structured, hierarchical, calling ourselves directly, we are Daoists because we are part of a Daoist line, then no. Taiji, Qigong and Chinese medicine almost certainly didn't originate from within those lines. Some people say they did. There's a legend of Chan Sanfeng creating Tai Chi on Wudang Mountain and things like this, but most people have managed to most scholars have managed to show that essentially that's mythology rather than accurate. I think more accurately, Taoism is sometimes known as an internal tradition, not because of its connection to the internal arts, but because it was developed within China. So it's one of the only Chinese, alongside Confucianism, I guess, the only sort of major Chinese philosophical traditions that influence their culture. Buddhism was obviously imported from outside, right? So Taoism, its age, it stretches back a long, long way, thousands and thousands of years, even prior to the Tao Te Ching. A lot of the belief systems that were formalized into Taoism were being practiced and implemented into Chinese culture. What that means is that Taoism has impacted every aspect of Chinese culture from right back in history, right through to modern day. Even if you go into Hong Kong, perhaps, or things like this, and you start talking to people, especially older generation, they start talking about concepts that are Taoist in origin. Essentially Taoism, to define it, means question markism. It's the study of natural laws and rhythms, essentially, to try to move a person towards a higher state of being. What that state of being is, they don't know. They don't say it's a one overriding God or anything like this. They just say we don't know. They call it Tao. This kind of Taoism, this belief system, has impacted all of Chinese culture. So therefore, any cultural arts that are purely Chinese in their development, like Taiji, Qigong and Chinese medicine, have been influenced by these same theories, so therefore they've been influenced by Taoism. Hence the reason Yin and Yang, Taiji and things are so prominent within these arts, the way they're discussed. So on that level, yes, they are Taoist, because ultimately they're Chinese, if that makes any sense to you. So, but if you're talking, like I say, a structured hierarchical organization, maybe like the Dragon Gate sect or the Northern Star sect or something that created these arts, no, definitely not. It would be disingenuous to the other traditions of Confucianism and also Buddhism that influence these practices as well, because you can definitely see the impact of these other traditions upon these arts too. The thing I would add to that too is that people who do, if they need to give themselves a title, I suppose, if they do call themselves Taoists, they are people that are trying to study the natural way and the natural rhythms of their mind and body to reach Tao. Those people who call themselves Taoists have then absorbed Tai Chi, Qigong and Chinese medicine into what they're doing as well, because they recognize that they are useful tools to lead them towards Tao. So on that level, they are Taoist because they've been absorbed by the Taoist tradition. But then there's other people that practice these things who aren't Taoists. There's Buddhist Qigong practitioners, there's Buddhist Tai Chi practitioners, there's Christian Qigong and Chinese medicine and Tai Chi practitioners as well. It doesn't matter. These are arts that can be divorced from Taoism and still be practiced. Although you'll still see some remnants. Generally it's unusual for people to talk about Tai Chi, no matter what their spiritual or religious background, and not talk about Yin Yang and Taiji and things like this. So yeah, Taiji, Qigong and Chinese medicine are Taoist in the sense that they are Chinese, and they were developed in a culture that's heavily influenced by Taoism. Do I believe that one mystical being named Chen Songfeng created all these arts, or whoever they attributed to? No, I don't. No, I don't. I believe that Tai Chi, Qigong, and Chinese medicine are the natural evolution of arts practiced by people to a very deep level. I mean, Tai Chi, as a martial art, is almost like the evolution that an external martial artist would go through if they went deep enough into their art and started to understand other ways, deeper ways in which the body could function, you know, and the same for the other arts to come out of there. So the next question is more personally aimed at me. It's asking, am I Daoist? Do I consider my Daoist? Do I consider myself to be Daoist? Not really, no. I consider myself to be me, Damo Mitchell. That's what I am. Out of all of the philosophies that I have encountered, engaged with, because I guess, like many other people, I'm someone who's naturally sought something out to give my life some kind of direction. Taoism is the one that made the most sense to me and spoke to me, and also the arts I studied generally use Taoism as a language to explain them. So in that sense, I mean, I guess you could say I'm Taoist. I am initiated into Taoist traditions, more than one actually, into Taoist traditions, but that's not what makes me who I am. I am just Damo, you know. But I think that most what you would call Taoists that you speak to, most of them would agree that the concept of labeling is, well, for a start, it's kind of against what Taoism was about. It's kind of erroneous. I mean, sometimes we might say that we're Taoist or something just so people outside can understand generally what philosophy we might adhere to in what we do. But you've also got to remember that you'll never do anything in the purest sense. So I'll never be able to interpret or understand Taoism in its purest sense any more than anybody else, because we always can only ever understand anything from our own standpoint, because we have our own layers, our own filters. So I, for example, am a 37-year-old English male, English white male. I don't know, those maybe some of the layers of who I am, plus all of my emotional makeup and psychological makeup and what have you. So all you're ever going to get through somebody like me is Tai Chi, Qigong, Chinese medicine, Taoism, these arts, taught and interpreted through the lens of a 37-year-old white English male called Damien. That's all you're ever going to get. But it's the same for any other teacher as well. I mean, there's always going to be those filters. There's going to be layers. It doesn't matter who you are, which is why every single person will have a slight distortion upon the teachings that they pass across. It's personalized to a certain extent. So that's what I'm saying. I teach through the language of Taoism, and I teach the arts that people associate with Taoism. But I wouldn't consider myself a pure Taoist. There's certain concepts in Buddhism that are hugely influential upon who I am, even some in Confucianism. There's some things about Confucianism I'm not too keen on. But there's also certain concepts in Christianity I find interesting, and then there's many concepts within all of those traditions that I don't really like that much. You know, they don't agree with them. But it doesn't matter. Taoism is the language I tend to use because it's the one that's easiest for people to understand. It's also the one that's easiest for me to understand. It's also the language that many of the past teachers have used to interpret these subjects. How is Qi relevant to Taijiquan, and is Fajin real? Okay, so there's two questions there. How is Qi relevant to Taijiquan? Well, I mean, the first thing, if you're going to study any art, is you should look at the terminology that people are using that teach that art. And Qi is the terminology, it's jargon used within Taijiquan, you know. Purely before we even look at what it means, you know, on a practical level, the people who are really good at Tai Chi, in my opinion, the ones that inspire me, that are highly skilled, that came before me, going back several generations, you know, all of them used the term Qi, and they discussed Qi. So they discussed everything, an act of sinking the Qi, mobilizing the Qi, and so on. So how can I then go, okay, these guys were really good at what they did. This is the kind of skill level that inspires me. I'd like to achieve that. So what I'll do is I'll change all of their terminology and strip something out. I mean, that's a nonsense, and it's also kind of insulting, because it implies an understanding of the art so deep that you understand which bits can be taken out, and it won't ruin the art. So I think that's the first thing to be aware of. Second thing is the use of the term qi. I mean, qi, the word qi is confusing to people, I think mainly because they try to look for a single definition that covers every single art. So for example, Chinese medicine will talk about qi in a specific way. Primarily it moves within the channel system, you know. Qigong will use qi in a separate way, it's a little different. Alchemy will use qi in a separate way. Tai Chi uses qi in a different way. And they all have, feng shui uses qi in a different way. I mean, they talk about different things. When feng shui is talking about qi, it's not talking about the energy that flows in your channel system. You know, there's different uses of the term qi. If I then try to cross those over with each other, then obviously it becomes confusing, and I can see why it would seem like an abstract concept. So if we take the Chinese medicine view, for example, that qi circulates within the channel system, obviously that's not particularly relevant to Tai Chi. No matter how many people think that the channel system is relevant to Tai Chi, it's not. Like, it doesn't work by I do this and then my lung channel opens or something. It's not how Tai Chi works. When they use the term qi in Tai Chi, essentially what we're referring to is the effects that are generated by certain causes we build into our practice. So when I sync the qi, if we break that down, this is obviously the first skill for Tai Chi, right? Syncing the qi. So if I sync without qi, what that means is I drop my weight. Okay, so essentially I collapse. I mean, that's syncing without qi, right? If I sync with qi, or sync the qi, when I sync, okay, my mass goes through my body and hits everything on the way down, if you like. It's like a little man falling out of an airplane and hitting every branch of the tree on the way down to the ground. As he's hitting all those branches, they're all stretching and being impacted by the little man bouncing off them. The actions of the stretching and the movement and the adjustments of the branches are the qi. So when I sync my qi, what that means is I actively sync. So my weight sinks through the body, it hits all of the different soft tissues, and it causes them to open out and stretch. You know, so gradually over time, as the muscles start to relax and I start to sync the qi more, then all of the soft tissues inside start to open up, and I find the inside of the body. The little spaces inside the body start to open up, and it can feel like you're full of air or something, for want of a better way of describing it. It feels like you're pressurized from the inside out. When the qi has been sunk to a high enough level, then the qi starts to mobilize. So then when all that pressure has started to expand, when I start to move, it's like lots of little cogs all over the body, hundreds and hundreds of them. One part of the soft tissue moves, everything starts to move. It's like your whole body is connected together and moves on the inside. And they call that moving the qi, moving the qi. Now, the soft tissues, when I start to make small movements inside, they'll pass that force through them like I wouldn't say like a wave, because that almost implies a lack of pressure to relax. It's more like squeezing toothpaste. That's what it feels like to me. I start to move and something is squeezed through the length of the soft tissue, and this becomes the jin. So they call this the qi, you know, the qi. That's a very mechanical, rudimentary, basic understanding of how the body is affected in Tai Chi. It does go deeper. I know lots of people who are very, very high level in Tai Chi will listen to that and go, oh, you've missed out this, you missed out. Of course I have, yeah. So I'm just literally talking a very vague overview of the physiological aspect of what goes on. There is also a deeper level to it, but it doesn't matter for now. So when I sync and the qi starts to move, okay, I am affecting what? I'm affecting soft tissues, membranes, the huang they call them, the nervous system, the muscles, the tendons, everything is moving inside. I mean, probably on a level, lymphatic system, I don't know, I've got no idea. All these things will probably move inside as well. To define these out into separate things might be difficult, so they're all grouped together and we simply call them qi. So this is where the problem comes. A lot of people, when they're trying to look at qi, they're looking at qi as a noun. You know, like a naming word, a term. You know, this is the qi, like I can hold it, like it's an object. Where in actual fact, in Tai Chi, it's more like an action word, like a doing word, right? So when I'm syncing the qi, I'm generating a series of effects through the body. Okay, it's a series of actions generated as a result of the syncing. If we look at that use of the term qi, then Yeah, that's relevant to Tai Chi, because that's the entire of Tai Chi. I mean, even in push hands, when people start putting pressures into my body, there's going to be a series of cause and effect chains generated within the inside of my body as a result of the push. That's the Qi. So Qi is massively relevant to Tai Chi. If there's no effect created by the causes, then there's no Qi. So, then it's not really Taijiquan. You could argue that maybe we should drop the term Qi and maybe talk about it physiologically, and okay, that has some strengths, but look at how complicated what I just said was. Imagine if every time you had to tell your students to sync the Qi, you had to say, actively drop your mass down through the soft tissues so that it started to set up a series of stretches and openings that started to create a feeling of expansiveness within the body that affected the nerves, the huang, the muscles, it would just go on and on and on. It's easier to say sync the Qi. So, is Qi relevant to Tai Chi Chuan? Yes. Is the definition of how people use Qi important? Yeah, as much as anything, it's a definition people need to look at rather than taking a term out. If people are believing Qi to mean like when I do Qi that this magical fluid circulates through my channel system, then, or my meridian system, then that's the wrong use of the word Qi. Wrong use of the word Qi. Remember, Qi is defined differently according to the art that you are practicing. The second part of this is Fajin real. So Fajin, straight into the controversy. I mean, Fajin is a very controversial aspect of Tai Chi that causes a lot of upset. I can kind of understand why. I do understand why. I'm not unrealistic in the thinking that people have no right to question this skill, because that's really not the case. People should question things, but they should also question things politely, I think, as well, rather than just getting really het up about it. In this sense, Fajin is used in different ways, but I'm assuming the question is based around the Fajin, as I understand it, of uprooting or something. So when I touch somebody, you can issue force, fa, to issue, jin, internal force, into the other person so that they're launched away, they're bounced away. And you see a lot of videos of Tai Chi people doing it. Very important later, putting the person in. And it's certainly a large part of the Yang family tradition, or it was. I mean, lots of branches don't use it anymore, but certainly if you look at records of past masters of the Yang family tradition, they did use it extensively within their training. Part of the reason it's controversial is because, as much as anything, people don't agree on anything. There's that. I mean, it's easy in the Tai Chi world. You only have to go online and look at the arguments that start to come around Fajin. People are very venomous about it if someone practices Fajin. It's easy in the Tai Chi world to get sucked into that and start to thinking, oh God, we're an argumentative world. But in actual fact, you go to the Wing Chun world, they're all arguing over whether this is the real Wing Chun, that's not the Wing Chun. It's the same in the karate world, and you go into horse riding, they're probably arguing over which is the right way to ride a horse. You go into tiddlywinks, they're probably arguing over the new best way to defeat. People like to argue, and they like to be rude, and they like to exercise their opinions in an aggressive manner, especially when it comes to the internet. It's a strange world, the internet, full of weirdly abusive people that are always much more polite when you meet them face to face. The Fajin causes such controversy that when you show a video of it or something like this, people don't go, don't just say I don't just believe in this. They'll actually threaten you. I mean, I've had everything from physical threats through to death threats, and believe it or not, even a death threat towards my wife recently over Fajin. This is bizarre. This is the act of mentally unhinged people to be this het up about it, and at the same time, like, these same people will often go online writing post after post, setting up entire forums just to let everybody know how much they hate Fajin. I don't know if these people realize, but you've almost got a mental illness. You're spending so many hours attacking this thing on like, blah, 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 blah. I hate all these people. So you're wasting your life. Like, it doesn't really matter what you believe. Like, you shouldn't put all that much time in it. The Fajin aspect of it, I mean, before I encountered it, I certainly wasn't stupid enough to start insulting people over it, but I didn't believe in it. You know, I thought it was some kind of hypnotism or something like people often do. I certainly didn't think that people were pretending. That's a weird thing. You'll see people thinking that Fajin is pretend. Do these people really think you've got, like, yourself in a class and you're fudging 45 people or something in a class and they're all pretending? Where do I find, or where do the other teachers find these 45 people that are going to pretend en masse for a video or something? I don't know. I don't really understand. There's a weird, people don't. First of all, Fajin is a biomechanical thing, and it involves various mechanics inside the body. It's an entry-level skill. It shows it's not considered an advanced skill in Tai Chi. It's essentially to show that you're operating under the right model. So you can build your body in various ways. If I lift weights and build lots of compressive training into my body, I build a very, very different body from if I learn how to stand and sync the Qi and create the Tai Chi body in the right way. If the Tai Chi body is built in the right way, then there's a certain type of biomechanical force you can issue that travels in a different way through the body than external force, and the result is Fajin. It means that when it encounters a physical force, it creates a reaction that disrupts the other person and tends to cause them to leave the ground. It was a sign that the body is being built in the right way, but that's all. I mean, this is part of the confusion with Fajin. It doesn't help because you've got people on one side saying, oh, it's not real, Tai Chi is really just MMA with Chinese names, which is a madness. And then you've got the other end of the scale where people are saying Fajin is the ultimate weapon used to destroy people, and you know, you can knock over King Kong with one finger and things like that. I think both of those camps are as bad as each other. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Fajin is a response to a set of cause and effects within the body that creates a result in the other person you're working with. But fighting is fighting. So, I mean, if martial arts, if Tai Chi is your interest from a martial point of view, that's what you want to do. You want to study the combat side of Tai Chi, then you still need to learn striking and footwork and distancing and timing and all of these things, because Fajin wouldn't be used in that way. Fajin is initially learnt within the drill of pushing hands. So what you have is a preset pattern. It means that the forces come into you in a very specific manner, in a specific direction. You tend to know where it's coming from. There's a rhythm. So essentially it's kind of semi-cooperative practice to me. People have turned push hands into like bad wrestling. That's not really pushing hands anymore, it's wrestling. This is, now don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against wrestling. Like people, if I say that, people often think I'm derogatory towards wrestling. I love wrestling, it's great fun. Like, not in a violent way do I want to dominate people, but I just enjoy wrestling. It's entertaining. And when I've had Tai Chi people who come and they want to push hands and they want to wrestle, okay, then I wrestle with them, that's fine. But it's not pushing hands. Definitely not. I mean, an example of this is, I was in the Chen Village area a number of years ago. Quite bloody hell, time goes. A lot of years ago now. And I had a friend, a Chinaman, who was a Chinese wrestler, Shui Jiao, that's what he did. And Sanda and Shui Jiao. And it was quite funny actually, because he really wanted to do Tai Chi, but his teacher wouldn't let him because he had no aptitude for Tai Chi whatsoever. I felt quite sorry for him, because I was there learning Tai Chi, and this guy had no aptitude for Tai Chi at all, because he was clumsy, built the wrong way. He was built like a Chinese wrestler, you know, and things. And I felt sorry for him, because every day he just, I just want to do Tai Chi, and my master makes me do Shui Jiao. So in the end, he asked me to teach him a couple of push hands drills. So I taught him the simple winding exercises and things like this, and in return I was doing Shui Jiao with him. But when the teacher we both had saw that he knew the push hands shape, the shape of, but not push hands, just literally what to do with your arms, he entered him into the Chen Village pushing hands tournament, and he won in his category, which I thought was brilliant. He beat all of the other people who'd done push hands, but just because he was a good wrestler. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It wasn't push hands anymore, it was wrestling. So it's clearly you've got something different taking place there. I should add as well, as a final twist, sorry, he did go on to learn Tai Chi afterwards, and he does enjoy it. So finally he got what he wanted, he learned Tai Chi. So then you have pushing hands drills, which are a preset pattern to learn how to do Fajin. And then after this, they become free form and less cooperative. Okay, so when someone's learning Fajin, it's the same. You start cooperative and you get less and less and less cooperative until ultimately it's done in a aggressive or assertive kind of manner. The problem is, to get Fajin to that level is very, very difficult. Like to get it to completely non-cooperative, where someone's trying to take your head off and you issue Fajin, that's very hard. Some people manage it, but they're a very, very small minority. Not many people do that. So what happens, because it's a very difficult skill, right? What happens is you get people then challenging them and attacking them and saying, why are you not issuing Fajin on them? It doesn't mean the Fajin's not real, it just means the practitioner's not good enough to issue it under those circumstances. You know, it's too difficult a skill, it's very, very difficult. So that adds another layer of complexity, you know, another layer of complexity to this, because people are going to say, well, why do you do it? If it's so hard, why do you practice it? You know, why not just practice hitting a heavy bag and wrestling and all these kind of things? Well, I agree. If you're into fighting, why not hit a heavy bag and do wrestling? You may as well. I mean, it's more functional. It'll bring results a lot quicker. Fajin is studied for two reasons. One, because it's really interesting. It's a fascinating phenomenon that can arise within the human body out of practice. And two, because it shows that your body is being built in the right way. If your body doesn't issue Jin, it's not being built according to Tai Chi's principles. And the third, I'll add a third reason, I know I said two, I'll add a third reason, it's because why shouldn't you aim for something really difficult? Even if hardly anybody ever achieves it in this life, why not aim for it? It's a part of the art. So why not? I mean, I'm in a, but then I'm a very contrary person. I'll argue with myself quite often. You might notice, almost schizophrenic in the way I approach things, is that I don't rely purely on Fajin. Fighting is not my main interest in any way, shape or form. I think it's unhealthy for a man of nearly 40, it would be unhealthy for a man of nearly 40 to be obsessed with fighting. I find that strange. That's almost another level of mental illness. When you're 18, when I was 18 I liked fighting. When you're in your 20s it's fascinating. By the time you're nearly 40, you're still interested in the pure domination of another person, or maybe you're paranoid enough that you think you're going to get attacked at any second. I would suggest you need counselling and probably to grow up. Like, this is really, this should not be your main focus in life. So fighting is not my main focus in life, but at the same time I recognize that it is a part of martial arts. So I use heavy bag and I do ground fighting and wrestling and things like that. It's bloody good exercise if nothing else. But I also practice Fajin. I wouldn't practice Fajin on its own and expect that that's going to build some kind of martial indestructibleness or whatever, but I certainly wouldn't take it out of Tai Chi because it's no longer Tai Chi. It is how the forces move through the body. I mean, as much as anything, part of the problem with Fajin and the people who don't believe in it is because they're building their bodies in the wrong way. I mean, I know that might sound like a horrible overgeneralization, but I look at the training they're doing. They're building their body in an external fashion and then expecting to be doing Tai Chi. Tai Chi is not the form. Okay, Tai Chi is not even relaxation and moving slowly. Tai Chi is the qualities you put into your body through your training, and if your body is built like something else, then it's not Tai Chi. If I build my body like a weightlifter and then I do Tai Chi, I'm not really doing Tai Chi, I'm doing weightlifting type style. I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't work. Fajin is a demonstration that your body has been built in the right way. That's what it is. What is the microcosmic orbit? Oof, there's a long question. So the microcosmic orbit, the Shazutiana. So where to start? So the microcosmic orbit in Qigong, most people would understand. Well, okay, the understanding most people have is Qi goes up the back of your body through your spine, or the channel on your back, and then down the front of your body. So it's like a loop of energy that takes place inside the body. Its main functions in the microcosmic. The first one is it recycles energy. So Jing, Qi, and Shen conversion needs to take place within the body. But if we're always converting things into Shen, then it starts to deplete the Jing. It's a very simple mechanism. You can't burn your fuel so much up towards the mind without it causing problems. Your intellect can go up, your intelligence, your problem solving, perhaps even your spiritual development, but you'll deplete your Jing, so you run out of energy. This happens to people within certain arts, which is why often you'll find very highly refined spiritual people have health collapses later on in their life, or not even that late in their life, they're depleting their Jing. The microcosmic orbit is initially a way to stop that, because you can think of it like the water cycle. Yeah, water turns into clouds, turns into rain, goes back into the river system. It's the same with the microcosmic orbit. If we have it in place, then when the Jing Qi Shen start to convert within the body, then as much as they convert up, they convert back down again. So it recycles it. So instead of just burning substances, burning energy up, we cycle it around inside the body. Okay, that's the first aspect to it. Second part of it is that they say it balances yin and yang. Okay, so don't jump to a Chinese medicine understanding straight away with sort of kidney yin and yang. That's not really what it's about. Essentially, when it goes up through your back, the movement of energy through your back, which essentially is like a bioelectric force, it starts to stimulate the nervous system, especially that related to the spine, which then spreads into the rest of the body, that puts the body into a more active state. So it means everything functions to a slightly higher level. Downside of that is it can actually burn the body after a while, which is why there's a little bit of risk involved in early stages of microcosmic orbit if it's not done properly. Second stage of it is when the Ren channel opens, and essentially it relaxes the nervous system. It probably has a connection to the vagus nerve, but I'm not enough of I've just been informed of this by teachers. I don't have enough of a knowledge on the human body from a Western scientific aspect to say that accurately, but it makes sense to me. So now the calming aspect of the body is activated, so that the body becomes active, everything goes into a higher degree of efficiency, but it's also sedated by the yin aspect of the movement of energy, meaning the body doesn't burn up. So everything is put into a state of harmony. It's interesting as well that when the microcosmic orbit opens, especially the Ren channel on the front, it's almost impossible to panic anymore. So you'll notice there's like, when something happens makes you jump, oh, your heart skips a beat or something like that, or it just doesn't happen once the microcosmic orbit is open. You almost become a little, feels like you lack adrenaline or something. You don't, that hyper doesn't come anymore. The body is in a state of calm almost all of the time. The microcosmic orbit is also used as a safety mechanism in this way, because we need to convert large amounts of energy. Okay, when I use the term energy, it's not the best definition for qi. It's almost like the byproduct of the qi is energy, like in the most literal sense. My body is more energized. It's like, I guess, like a stimulant, into the system. But the problem with stimulants is they can be quite damaging on your nervous system and the kidneys and things. So the microcosmic orbit is a safety mechanism to stop your nervous system and kidneys and adrenals burning up under the action of this extra energy, in its most literal sense of the term, that you're building. So for that reason, it's a safety mechanism as well, a very, very important one. At later stages in the training, often we need to stimulate a lot of the sort of faculties of the brain and mental function that's quite high up in the body. We don't do that at the beginning, which is why all the focus in Qigong is down here at first, right? Grounding everything down here. But later, everything up here must be stimulated. If the microcosmic orbit is not in place, then it runs the risk of putting you into a too hyper a state. So mentally, emotionally, psychologically can be quite damaging, not the best for your mental health. So we need the Ren channel to calm everything, so that anything that comes up can just be sunk back through the body. It doesn't literally mean it travels in a loop like this. This is kind of the model to help you understand it. It's more like it sedates the byproducts of the increased energy that you're generating through your practice. Microcosmic, those are the key functions of it. There's others as well, very, very deep to do with alchemy, but these are the sort of basic ones. It's relevant to the beginning and intermediate stages of Qigong. Beyond that, in the advanced stages, there's other mechanisms that want to be in place, but it's certainly for beginning and intermediate, it's very important. I should say with the microcosmic, you can't open it with your imagination. Like, no matter how many books you read that say sort of trace your mind around the orbit, or imagine a light going around you, or put your mind on this point, this point. I did that for years when I was like 14, 15 or something, trying to do it. It doesn't work. It stimulates the nervous system because of the mind being in a place, so it can feel like something is moving. You feel like a pulse through the nerves of the spine. So it's not the microcosmic orbit, it's a psychosomatic reaction to your mind being in that region of the body. I say that because also you can't breathe up the front and breathe out down the back, or that doesn't work either. I say that because I've had lots of people come into the arts I teach and think they've got the microcosmic orbit open, but In almost every case they haven't. There are certain physiological, like physical reactions that take place as a byproduct of the microcosmic orbit opening that can be tested. Okay, there's qualities in the channels that can be palpated. If you go to a sort of high-level alchemy master or Nei Gong master or anything like that, it's kind of people that makes my skill level look about this big or something, is genius level. When you go to see them, they'll often check your channel system, but they won't do it through energy projection or anything esoteric. Why bother? They do it through palpating your body, and they feel the channel system and they check for the quality. And if the channels don't have that quality to them, because your chi will change the soft tissues, which will change the quality of the channels in a palpatable fashion. If they don't have this quality to them, then they know the channels aren't open. So they will not teach you, well, if they've got any respect for your health, they won't teach you any of the high-level arts until the microcosmic orbit is open. It's opened essentially by developing the lower dantian and sinking the chi in such a way that it hits critical mass, so that it then starts to move of its own accord and conduct through the nervous system and through the soft tissues of the back and the front of the body until everything opens up. That's essentially how it works. It's like sort of filling something till it overfills, if you like, or preparing the body till it's ready to overspill into those channels. It's quite a lengthy process. It takes a bit of time. Which is quite amazing. You see people do, like, I did a weekend course on the microcosmic orbit, now I have it, or I did an hour of practice and the orbit opened, or I don't think so. Like, you've got to remember that the microcosmic orbit was written in alchemical classical text, right? So the past masters, like generations and generations, who spent their entire lives up in the mountains studying these things, growing old and weird away from society, up in isolation. When they wrote the classical text, they didn't write down the basics. Like, what's the point? There was other people that could teach you those. What they did was they wrote the profound insights of the things they'd realized after years and years of study, and one of which was the microcosmic orbit. So it's almost a little bit insulting to these people who went up into mountains to practice microcosmic orbit for years on end, to think you can achieve it in a weekend. It's almost like the assumption is people are so much better these days than they were 200 years ago or whatever, that we don't need, or longer than 200 years, we don't need to do the same amount of hours they do. I mean, it really isn't the case. The goalposts often need moving in our training. If you think you've achieved something, you probably haven't. And if you keep training, you'll find out a few years later down the line you hadn't achieved it, that you touched upon it, but there's always further and further to go. The microcosmic orbit opens as a sequence of stages. So initially there's an opening of the nervous system, like I discussed, and then after that it goes deeper and deeper till you're actually moving congenital fluids through the body in a very particular fashion. At the higher ends of the microcosmic orbit, not the highest, but higher, further down the line, it's also the way you replenish Jing. So there's a lot of argument. Can you replenish Jing? Chinese medicine people generally say no, because they're taught that it's burned up over the course of your life. Actually, through the microcosmic orbit, it can, because it also fits in with the marrow washing training. Gradually, the body is stimulated in such a way that a particular fluid that they called the jade fluid in ancient times would be generated within the glandular system. When you taste it, it tastes very much like sort of honey, molasses honey or something like that. To taste your own. Don't lick somebody else's jade fluids or something. It's just disgusting, but it's generated in yourself. I just thought I'd point it out. And when you take it into the body, it fills the mouth quite often, and it trickles down through your glandular system and starts to essentially replenish the Jing. So that becomes quite an important layer of the microcosmic orbit that you'll touch upon further into the arts. Don't know if I answered the question or rambled around that then. I'm not entirely sure.